visited palaces around the world with my husband and twin brothers. Versailles in Paris, Schönbrunn in Vienna, and the Grand Master Palace on the island of Rhodes, to name a few. All were splendid and opulent, but somehow I fell in love with Ho Chi Minh City's Independence Palace, renamed Reunification Palace on the 30th of April 1975. When I heard about the palace, I expected it to be more like its predecessor, the French neo-Baroque inspired Norodom Palace. However, it contrasts starkly with that more expensive building, which was bombed, torn down, and replaced between 1962 and 1966. I would best compare Independence Palace to an oyster, not immediately spectacular, but bearing a pearl of exceeding beauty. Modern and oriental, this national treasure's design reflects the Vietnamese philosophy and psyche. The fall of Saigon occurred at the palace. This marked the end of the Vietnam or Second Indochina War, which had raged from November 1st, 1955 to April 30th, 1975. North and South Vietnam were finally united, and so this building is also symbolic of victory, peace, and territorial integrity. My friend Marlene joined me on my first of 3 trips to the palace. Our attention was immediately drawn to the right of the entrance. The Model 843 tank, manufactured in Russia, was the first to try to ramp down the gates on the 30th of April 1975. Although it failed, the Model 390 tank crushed the gates down and moved forcefully into the palace. Both tanks exhibited in the palace grounds are replicas of the real ones on display in Hanoi. We studied the F-5 fighter jet and were amused by its incredulous history. On the morning of the 8th of April 1975, Lieutenant Than Trung, recruited by the North, infiltrated the Southern Vietnamese Air Force. He ingeniously spread misinformation about himself and his plane so he could drop his payload on Independence Palace, where the president resided. He dropped 4 bombs. Although this only caused minor damage, his actions were celebrated in North Vietnam, widely covered in Western media, and constituted a major blow to South Vietnamese morale. Marlene and I loved the way the insignia on weaponry was treated. The roundels were simply crossed out to show the regime they represented no longer exists, while acknowledging that they had existed. They are not displayed as symbols of oppression and without malice, fear, or hatred. We walked to the palace entrance and admired the bonsais alongside, lovingly displayed in pots representing the spirit of the people reflected in the 4 sacred animals of Vietnam. The dragon in the east, a positive symbol of power, nobility, and of the emperors who were regarded as the sons of heaven. The unicorn from the west represents peace, mercy, and good fortune, and the goodness that only appears on special occasions. The turtle from the north represents longevity, spiritual strength, and immortal intelligence. The phoenix from the south, fashioned with a snake neck, eagle claws, fish scales, and peacock tail, symbolizes virtue, nobility, and grace. According to legend, it only appears in prosperous times and represents peace. I was impressed by the palace's design and the story of its architect, No Vit Thu. He completed his studies at École de Beaux-Arts Paris, where he was awarded the first grand prize of Rome, the school's highest recognition. Nor was invited home to Vietnam in 1960 by the president and asked to design the Independence Palace. Globally recognized, he was the first Asian to become an honorary fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Ngo Vitu was also a celebrated artist, and one of his most famous paintings, the National Landscape, is displayed in the palace's main banqueting room. The Independence Palace's overall structure is a rendering of an ancient ideogram, G, which means good fortune. Front elevations symbolize Ka, or truthful speech. The flagstaff was placed to symbolize Zang, which is unswerving fidelity. 3 horizontal lines over the roofing, facade and canopy, San, represent the mystical triad of humanity, firmness of purpose and wisdom. The 3 strokes above form the character Jo, indicative of the purpose of the head of state. Lines along the facade relate to the character Jing, signifying prosperity, an eternal wish for the country. By incorporating these and other Eastern symbols into his architecture, Ngo designed a building which is a fitting legacy for the Vietnamese people, modern and relevant to the decade in which it was constructed. Marlene and I went through the welcoming entrance and enjoyed the cool, peaceful, airy interior, decorated in green and white. First, we went to see the banquet room. I imagined how proud I would have felt to be invited to dine at that table. At first, I wondered if I would have felt nervous to be included with up to 100 other dignitaries at the table, but decided I would have felt at home in the room, painted gold to be convivial. I would have admired the painting by architect Ngo Vitu, painted in 7 sections and deftly crafted into a single masterpiece, representing national unity. Sadly, this beautiful room was last used to host a state dinner way back on the 1st of March 1975. The next room to capture my delight was the conference hall, used to host up to 500 delegates and to install each new cabinet. Many will remember the room for its beauty, richness and elegance. Others would associate it with anguished memories. President Nguyen Van Thieu delivered his resignation speech on the 21st of April, 1975. He spoke for 2 hours about his country's situation following America's decision to discontinue support for South Vietnam. In November 1975, the Consultative Council for National Reunification used the room for discussions. The next room to take my fancy was the Ambassador's Chamber. The huge painting entitled Bin Ngo Dai Kao, meaning the proclamation of victory, is its focal point. It comprises 40 pieces depicting peaceful 15th century Vietnamese life. The last time it was used for ambassadorial purposes was the 18th of April 1975, when President Thieu received newly appointed Japanese Ambassador Hiroshi Hitomi. Then I went in search of the 2 presidential reception rooms. In the first one, I noticed the President's chair placed with importance on a platform in front of a striped wooden panel symbolizing the flag of the Republic of Vietnam. Both this chair and the one opposite have dragon motifs symbolizing power. Other chairs have been fashioned with phoenix designs, symbolic of longevity. I longed to sit on those chairs, but as they were only used for public display, that was not allowed. A grand pair of ivory tusks flank this room, but can be seen in both reception rooms. These, a gift from his wife's nephew, were President Thieu's pride and joy. The second, simpler reception room is historically compelling. During the 19th to the 23rd of October 1972, 6 meetings were held between President Thieu and Henry Kissinger. Kissinger was a controversial politician who, as a Jew, fled with his family from Nazi Germany in 1938. Much later, he became President Nixon's national security advisor. It is understood, though, that the two men most engaged in these negotiations were Henry Kissinger and North Vietnamese Politburo member Le Duc Tho. Both were awarded the 1973 Nobel Peace Prize for their peace efforts, although Le Duc Tho refused to accept the honor. After considering these weighty matters, I needed some light relief. I walked into the adjoining passageway and started admiring the palace's external stone latticework, visible from many floors, reminiscent of bamboo. This feature adds beauty to the palace's exterior, while also mediating air and natural sunlight into the palace. I walked upstairs and saw a helicopter stationed on the roof. It was President Nguyen Van Thieu's UH-1 helicopter, parked in the vicinity where the two bombs that pilot Nguyen Tan Trung dropped. This show of masculine strength seemed contrasted by the room nearby, the First Lady's reception room. The President's wife often held receptions here, entertaining the wives of visiting heads of state and leaders of various national and international organizations. In the room you can see 3 porcelain figures representing the gods of happiness, prosperity, and longevity, which add to the room's peaceful, cheerful nature. Then I steeled myself to look at the more somber aspects of the palace, the 72.5-meter basement and adjoining rooms. It was designed by Lieutenant Colonel Engineer Van von Dien, the Independent Palace's chief. The basement rooms are linked by small entrances, armored walls, and ventilation systems. The maximum security shelter, at a depth of 2.5 meters, has a blast wall capable of resisting explosions up to 2,000 kilograms. Danger and conflict felt tangible. A staircase gave the President direct access to the shelter from his second-floor office. During the bombing of the palace on the 8th of April 1975, the President and his family took shelter here. Although interesting, Marlene and I were happy to leave these dreary rooms and to make our way into the sunlight. Before exiting the palace, we stood and admired the palace's oval front lawn. Today, its grassiness makes the palace seem calm and cheerful, belying its turbulent past, which poignantly played out at the palace for 8 years, ending in 1975. This was when I was first born and starting to grow up. It was time for some refreshments, so we walked past tennis courts and made our way to one of the coffee shops so we could drink refreshing smoothies. On another afternoon, I enjoyed a tasty lunch while working beside the peaceful water feature. If you visit the palace, you'll find further intriguing places to explore. The conference room, atrium, the library containing the books and research papers of former presidents, souvenir and gift shops. People with children can be sure they'll be entertained by jungle gyms installed for youngsters. Should you wish for a change of scenery, there is lots to do around the palace. The Dreamer's Dessert Bar and Bakery, a 5-minute walk from the palace, is a chic and elegant coffee shop, reminiscent of French patisseries. It's stocked with an array of tasty, beautifully decorated pastries and coffees. I chose a delicious croissant filled with a sweet egg filling, the perfect way to end off a fascinating day, and another good reason to fall in love with Saigon.